Greetings, it is I, Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on HtR the Reckoning in the World of Darkness. Apologies, a couple more videos of dim light, so if you can't see me perfectly, just enjoy the smooth sounds of my voice, at least for this episode. Alright, let's continue where we left off. We were talking about some of the basics of, well, creating your character. Let's dive into 5 important things you're going to have to remember when creating your character. The first thing you have to think about is your character can be any race, culture, or nationality. There is no limit onto what your character may be. Except, depending on what you're choosing, you should talk to your storyteller. Go over your storyteller and tell them, I want to be this, I want to be this age, I want to be this culture, I want to be this nationality. Depending on the circumstances of the game that you're going to be playing on, certain characters may work better than others. If you're playing certain types of characters, your storyteller might have to tell you, you're going to have to know about this, there are these problems going on. Now, this oftentimes doesn't come up for cultures and nationalities. Most of the time this comes up is, of course, age. If you're playing someone way too young or way too old, yeah, it's going to have a problem. The problem is that all of you are going to be playing novice hunters. You haven't had a lot of time to either meet with other hunters and get a knowledge of them, to experience a lot of the terrors of the world of darkness around you, and to get a lot of the experience that you might need to deal with a lot of these things. So yeah, I could play a teenager, I could play a child, I could play an old man. I'm becoming a hunter. I could play whatever, but there are sometimes problems, so you want to talk to your storyteller. Now, it's important to note that the system that you're playing with, number 2, it's not a mechanical system. No, the system that we're going to be talking about is a personal character development system. Easy way to say it's personal development is the focus of the system, is the focus of the entire gameplay, developing your own character. Third thing you have to know, you're going to spend certain numbers of points on certain number of traits to define your character. Once you've done this, you'll get some freebie points in order to fill in any kind of gaps that you had that you feel you need to perfect your character in the way that you want it to be. Granted, you're not going to have everything, you're not going to be an expert at everything, you're not going to be the most powerful there is, but generally have an idea of what you want to do, and you will use the combination of the points you're given and your freebie points to put this together. You're going to have to then also realize traits. They're going to normally be from 1 to 5 for the majority of the traits. 1 is basically a novice or a beginner, while 5 is like the greatest expert you could be at this subject. So there is a wide variety between this. You could definitely start with 1s in a lot of things, but here's where the important thing comes in. You can improve a lot of stuff here. Majority of the traits that you have can easily be improved with the course of the game, through experience points or other means. Granted, this doesn't mean that all of them are easy to increase. There are some traits which are more difficult, but you will see those traits in comparison and realize which ones are easier to raise, which ones are more difficult, and have an idea of which ones you want to start out with higher than. Maybe you want to focus on those more difficult ones so you get them out of the way, rather than focusing on the ones that you can easily raise in game. The last thing that you're going to have to think about, you're responsible for taking on a role in this game that is not detrimental to the group and other players. Because no hunter is an island. No hunter can go on the hunt alone. The resources and support of other hunters is what keep you alive for very long term. So if you're a character that ends up being detrimental to the other players' characters, they're going to kick you out and leave you on your own to go get killed. So make a character that can work with the team. That's the important part here. You're going to have to remember the team is helping keep you alive in this game. Hunter is a deadly game. It is a game where you can easily die because you're fighting with monsters that are oftentimes very powerful. And you alone might not be enough to face one down and win. Maybe you might get lucky, but oftentimes you don't. So keep a character, work with others, call it a day. Now let's go over the basics of actually building your character, because guess what? Just as there are 5 things to remember, there are 5 steps you're going to have to take to build your character. I'm just going to quickly go over them right now, and then we're going to start diving into depths of each of these steps. First step is going to be, well, your concept. Your concept is, well, a number of things, and first off is your actual concept. This is a kind of focus of your character. Your creed goes here, and your nature and demeanor. Basically 2 kind of attitudes that you have. One of them how you actually are, and the one that you act to the world. Both which are important for some other statistics later on. So all 4 of these are actually important to do because they help define your character, help define your character's personality, and help define a little bit of what they're going to be doing in the game. Now, your attributes. You have 3 categories of attributes: physical, mental, social. Each of them have 3 attributes in each of them, for a total of 9. You're going to assign a priority to each of these groups. Do I want to be more physically oriented, more mentally oriented, more socially oriented? I choose my primary, and I get 6 points to divide into that group. I choose my secondary, whether let's say I choose mental, and I want my physical to be secondary, I get 4 points there. And for my third, my tertiary in this case, since I chose mental, then physical, social's last, I get 3 points. It is important to note, with every attribute, you start with an automatic 1. So I at least have 1 dot in all 9 of them. I'm not going to have a 0, but after that, it's going to be determined where I put these points to determine where they end up. Step 3, abilities. Now, abilities, just like our attributes, are divided into 3 groups: talents, skills, and knowledges. Talents, which are more inbred; skills, which you more learn with activity; and knowledge, which is, of course, learned through mental activity. So that gives you an idea of which each of these are. Just like with our attributes, they have a primary, secondary, and tertiary score ratings. If you choose a primary, you get 11 to it. Secondary, 7. Tertiary, 4. Step 4, your advantages. This is your backgrounds, which you get 5 background points to choose between all the backgrounds. Your virtues, you get 3. And your edges, which we'll talk about when we get to edges. Once you've chosen all that, you get to step 5, finishing touches. This, you figure out your starting conviction and your starting willpower. Conviction based on creed, willpower starting at 3, and you can spend your freebie points. You get 21 freebie points. At this point in time, any trait you had on here, which you could only raise to 4 before, important note, can now be raised to a 5. So that's the only way you can get a 5 in any trait to start out with, is with freebie points. Freebie points also cannot be used for certain things. Virtues and edges cannot be purchased with freebie points. So those things, out the window. However, you can increase your conviction starting from its creed to a maximum of 8 to start out with. So there we go. We had 4 in any other trait we could have at maximum. Now 5 with freebie points. Conviction up to 8. We've spent our freebie points. Our character's done. Now, just like the creeds are listed in the books, examples of concepts, natures, and demeanors are all listed in the books, and they're important to look at, along with a list of backgrounds. These are lists that you're going to be looking at because they aren't really listed on your character sheet. Your attributes, your abilities, they all have names on your sheet, so you have a general idea of what they are, even though you don't not know the details. The other ones you're going to have to write in, especially backgrounds, which you'll have multiples of. The others, the concept phases, parts of this stuff, those you'll just have to look at the list of the book, have an idea of what they are, choose appropriately, fill them in. Of course, the book does provide you with a chart of costs for everything that you can buy freebie points with. Now, character creation's important part because it should be a point where your storyteller guides you through it. Why am I guiding my characters through it, my players through the character creation process? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First off, it familiarizes myself with their characters. I get an idea of some information about their characters. I get some ideas for plot points that I might have come up with on my own that I can include in my already planned adventures. Things that make it more personalized. Also, if these players aren't familiar with the rules of Hunter, this might be a good way of helping them familiarize themselves with the rules, because I'm going to be working with them to help them develop these characters and learn a little bit more. It can also help if everyone else is there, because then they get ideas of how their characters are going to work together and build their personality and group their troop together to be one whole unit, because they don't need to have a perfect mesh. They just have to be good enough that it would be reasonable for them to be working together as a group. That's the thing. It's just like you can't have a difficult character, as I was saying. Your characters have to be good enough that they fit close enough that they'll work together. You, as the storyteller, are going to want to make sure you provide character sheets, especially if you're doing a physical version of the game. Granted, now in day and age, you can do online plenty of different ways where there might be online character sheets. But there are definitely points in time where you might want to physically be there with people, and printing out character sheets, either copying it from the back of the book or finding a PDF online, which you oftentimes can, are great ways that you can provide character sheets for people. You're going to want to make sure to give a kind of tour to the character sheet of anybody that's not familiar with it, just to get ideas about it. Once you're done this, you're going to want to talk to your characters about a little bit about the chronicle, the storyline that you're going to be going over, giving them some basic information that they can work off of in order to build a character. They're going to want to know a little bit about the world, where it's located, certain things like that, that will help determine your character. If you're setting a game in LA and someone's building a hunter that's from Boston, why are they there? Why did they move? There's a lot of good reason behind that it might exist, but your characters should know where they're from to give that storyline of why I'm crossed the country. Why am I over here? It helps build the character. I can still be from Boston. I just have to know how it connects. Similarly, this point in time, you could be learning stuff about characters that could be inappropriate to the campaign you're doing. Feel free to tell people when they're doing something that's not going to fit within the campaign world and let them know, yo, don't do this. That's not appropriate. That's not how we're going to work this. Play this a little bit more standard like everyone else, or don't do that. You're allowed to disallow something that will disrupt the game, and that's what it says. You focus on the problems that players are building, that your characters will help to disrupt the game, even if they're not doing it on purpose. They're doing something that will cause the disruption. Let them know. Now, you might want to spend an entire section, building characters and then running preludes with those characters. Whether together or separately, you're going to put these together to build the story out. Now, there are times when a character could be so complex, or the campaign itself could be secretive in a way that you might want to run preludes privately with each individual. That is an option. Regardless, though, you're going to be using this point in time to start to establish things. You're trying to put character to these characters so that they're not like shells of people. They're not just stats that are there. They're characters that have these stats. And this is a point in time to help establish and build that. So that's it. Once we've done all that character building, we've got everything set up, that's when we run our preludes. We're either going to take the players aside, kind of like, oh, I'm going to run this little thing with you over here quickly, or grab a bunch of people if I feel like these people met this way through a prelude, or maybe I want to run a prelude with everybody where they meet and become a team. There's a lot of things to do with the prelude itself that can help to establish how the campaign will start. This is the prequel. This is chapter 0 of the adventure the characters are going to be going on. This is not your primary session, your primary beginning session, whereas the point in time where everybody's formally introduced to the chronicle you're going to be running and can finalize things about their character. We're using this prelude to throw them into the adventure and then use the rest of what momentum we have to establish themselves for the adventure, for the chronicle. The thing about Hunter is oftentimes the prelude is the most important part. Most of the time, that's when they hear the voice of the messenger. The imbuing. Most of the time when you're running a prelude, it's the imbuing of your characters. It gives them an idea of the opening story to them, where they started from, what caused them to become this creed or that creed, what brought them forth to be hunters. It's an establishment, so that's why it is very important often. Now, if you're familiar with this storytelling system, concept of your character is a very easy thing to do. It's an old trick you already know. But if you're new to role-playing games in general, and of course storytelling systems, it can seem daunting to sort of come up with a concept to focus in your character onto, but it's something that we can do and that we're going to be talking with you through. And that's where we're going to dive into it next time. So that's what we're going to do next time. So today I introduced you to, of course, some basics about building your characters. 5 things to remember, 5 steps, and a little bit about what you, as the storyteller, will be doing for your characters. Of course, then, we talked just a second about concept, which is where we're going to dive into a lot next time. Concept. We're going to talk about the basics of what it means to take a concept, what it does for your character, etc., etc. We're not going to go over each individual concept. That'll be up to you to read through them all. But we'll go through the basics of information of them, and maybe move on to some other information, because there are such things as natures and demeanors to talk about, maybe some creeds. But anyway, I hope you're having a great day. If you're newer to joining a World of Darkness game, and you've had some interesting experience, especially with Hunter or another World of Darkness game when you build your first character, let me know those first character stories. Those are always interesting, where we started with the game system, whether it was our first system or one that we're just being introduced to. It's always interesting, that first character in the system. Regardless though, I hope you're having a great day, and until the next time, I bid you farewell.